earlier, so I'm sure he has dwelt on the what and the why and what we need to do I was in Washington 3 weeks back, and on the back of the IMF World Bank meeting, we had about 100 से ज़्यादा finance ministers होंगे from all over the world in terms of the coalition of finance ministers for climate action. And the operating word is action. जो अभी पहले भी बात की जा रही थी, from Baku to Belém to Turkey this year in terms of the COP. So what and why, तो सबको मालूम है. We are living this day in and day out here in Pakistan. And for us, it's a reality. Equally, it's also quite clear, and that's why the finance ministers are coming together, that we have to work very closely with our counterparts, with the ministers of climate change, the ministers of planning, and really take hold of the government approach. Because जब तक हम इसको mainstream नहीं करें, ये academic discussion ही रहेगी. If you don't bring it down into your budgets, if you don't bring it down in terms of your resource allocation, then, as I said, it will remain a debating club. And as Pakistan, we cannot afford to be that at this point in time. मुझे नहीं पता कि डॉक्टर मुसद्दिक साहब ने क्या बातें की हैं, लेकिन क्योंकि मैं यहाँ मौजूद नहीं था, लेकिन I'm sure he must have dealt with a lot of things in terms of the enabling principles and the pillars which are already in place. NDCs have been there for some time. We are now moving into NDC 3.0, Climate Prosperity Plan with the help of the V20. I think that's there. State Bank की green taxonomy की बात आई. From my perspective, देर आए, दुरुस्त आए. I think this should have happened some time back. But in any case, we are here with the taxonomy and the rollout. And then NDMA. I think in that case, we are now in a very, very good place. If some of you have been to NDMA, बड़ी अच्छी बात है. अगर आप वहाँ नहीं तशरीफ लेकर गए, I would strongly suggest कि जनरल साहब से बात करके आप NDMA सेंटर में ज़रूर जाएं. Because now the kind of AI-led early warning systems which are now in place, and if you've been in that center, you'll be absolutely mesmerized and surprised in terms of the information that we have. It's month by month rendition in terms of a possibility of a Gulf incident, of a heat wave situation, in terms of any flood indication. So from a preventive perspective, we now have a very good place in terms of our preparatory discussion. क्योंकि अब ये नहीं हम कह सकते कि जी ये अचानक हो गया, ये कल हो गया, ये परसों होने वाला है. We now have very scientific data available to us in terms of how and what we need to do around the policy measures and very specific measures that we need to take in terms of looking at these events. Ministry of Finance का ताल्लुक है, और again जैसे मैंने जिक्र किया कि whole of the government approach है, तो इसमें हम क्या कर सकते हैं, कैसे help कर सकते हैं, how can we help support this whole effort? The way I look at it is that actually at 3 levels. The first one is कि जो fiscal buffers को create करने की ज़रूरत होती, and it goes back into macroeconomic stability, and it's यहाँ बड़ी debate होती है कि what's the big deal about macro stability. The big deal about macro stability is that it's basic hygiene in any country, whether it's foreign investors, local investors, and also when it comes to exogenous shocks. और ये again academic discussion नहीं है. 22 का flood आया, was a devastating flood. एक दरिया and primarily one province. और एक और province उसमें affect हुआ. And we went running to Geneva to get the pledges. We went for an international appeal right away. और उसमें से कुछ पैसा आया, कुछ नहीं लगा, because bulk of it was project financing, these were not grants. 25, पिछले साल, October में, we again had to realize the consequences of the flood that happened over the summer. And this time around, the intensity was much larger, as you all know. We were all here. This time with 3 rivers and almost the entire Pakistan, starting with GB, KP, into Punjab, into Sindh. But this time around, although there were a lot of voices coming in, कि अभी जाएं, अभी international appeal करें. And the Prime Minister and the Cabinet decided, no, we have the resources available with us. And that's what we did in terms of the rescue and relief effort. किसी की हमें मदद की ज़रूरत नहीं थी, किसी की हमें आगे जाके बात करने की ज़रूरत की महसूस नहीं हुई, because we had the fiscal buffer and the fiscal space available. And then of course on to rehabilitation and reconstruction. और वो अल्लाह ताला का शुक्र है कि of course a lot of things that we fought at that point in time in terms of worst case scenario, I think agriculture has to catch the next cycle, the next crop cycle, or wo, let's see how it goes. But this is very, very important. Okay, from finance and from the government side, we continue to have these fiscal buffers available or back to indigenous resourcing, because that I think is very important. अब जो बाकी climate finance की resourcing है, उस पर भी बात हुई है, multilateral support की, whether it's Asian Development Bank, World Bank. We are very grateful to Ajay and his team for providing the country partnership framework, which is a 10-year partnership framework. और इसमें 3 pillars हैं. 2 of those are dealing with existential issues for Pakistan. One is climate, the other is population, and the third one is sort of the fiscal side of things. तो अगर हम climate को ही देखें, तो अगर $2 billion का उन्होंने commitment दी है हर साल, तो तकरीबन $600 से $700 million हमें available हैं in climate finance. इसी तरह जो IMF की है, उनके साथ जो discussions हैं, उसमें one is the EFF part of it and the other is the climate resiliency. तो अल्लाह करे इंशाल्लाह बोर्ड फ्राइडे को है और ये अप्रूव हो जाए, तो वहाँ भी हमें resiliency के climate resiliency पे we expect another $200 million coming in. इसी तरह एशियन डेवलपमेंट बैंक हमें ये सपोर्ट दे रहा है. Local issuance of green sukuks की बात हुई है. We are working very hard at this point in time to go for the inaugural Panda bond, which is going to be roughly $250 million equivalent of RMB. And during this month, we expect to print that. The important thing is the green bond. And more, we are looking at, as the government of Pakistan, to look at diversifying sources around sort of the green financing. उसकी वजह सिर्फ ये है कि ये some of the institutional stuff which is there, which is the Green Climate Fund, या अभी शर्मल शेख की बात हुई, Loss and Damage Fund. The reality is कि अगर हम bureaucracy हैं, इनसे बड़ी bureaucracies कोई नहीं है. To get, first of all, getting accredited, and then at least trying to get some money out of that. So we should not rely. I mean, I think it's an and discussion. I think it's an important discussion that we continue to engage with them, but this is not how we're going to move forward in terms of climate finance. The other thing which is important is कि financing की बात होती है और billions of dollars के gap की बात होती है, trillions of dollars की gap की बात होती है. One needs to be pragmatic and practical about it. Let's first use the funds which are available now and put them to good and effective use. जब ये billion, $1.5 billion, $2 billion आपके खर्च हो जाएंगे, तो फिर हम जरूर जाएं कि जी $365 billion का गैप है, कि $400 billion का गैप है या $200 billion का गैप है. ये सारी academic discussion. इस वक्त जो हैं, उनको effectively इस्तेमाल कीजिए. And that's where the ball is in our court, in coming up with investable, bankable projects. And that is very important. I think CPP जो ये V20 की मदद से ये climate prosperity plan आया है, I think it's a very good start in terms of looking at the pipeline, looking at the projects which can help us in terms of adaptation as we go forward. Also, I think we all met, those of us who were engaged in this with Dr. Majun. Last week, he was here from Beijing, and he has played a very, very important role in China's transition into green finance. So, जो China को कहते हैं from zero to hero, from 0%, they went into 40% of the global market in terms of green bond issuances. So we are very grateful. Dr. Majun is a great friend of Pakistan, and he has volunteered to help us in terms of Green Accelerator, which is essentially looking at projects जिसमें आगे green investment जो है वो आ सके. तो ये दूसरी बात है जहां हम को practically हम Ministry of Finance की हम help और support कर सकते हैं. And the third one is the current conflict. And the current conflict, 2020 hindsight is a wonderful thing. And as you know, our leadership is at it, is not giving up in terms of the mediation efforts. And we saw some positive development overnight. और हम सब दुआगो हैं कि ये conflict जो है जल्द से जल्द इस पे ख़त्म हो. But there are also lessons learned. And a few lessons which we need to think through as we move forward as a country, as a nation. We cannot just focus on commercial reserves. We have to move towards having a strategic reserve. And the second thing is कि जो हमारी journey है towards renewables, that has absolutely got to be accelerated. And reduction in terms of our reliance on fossil fuels as we go forward. So I think उस journey में, whether this is solar, whether it's wind, whether it's hydro, in terms of in conjunction with the Economic Affairs Division and ourselves, to find the right resourcing to get these projects accelerated so that we can get to a certain stage in terms of renewables, I think is going to be very critical. और दूसरा ये है कि I see the chairman of Pakistan Bank Association is sitting here, Salimullah Saab is here, but also in terms of energy efficiency, in terms of whatever we are doing, whether it's the fan replacement program or the focus on the EVs as we go forward. इसमें जो Ministry of Finance ने जो subsidies देनी है, जो first loss guarantees देनी है, we are very committed to get this journey accelerated, inshallah, as we go forward. So, from my perspective, in a very pragmatic and practical way, first of all, continue to build fiscal buffers, because these exogenous shocks are here to stay, whether it's on the climate side or unfortunately many other things. The other thing is climate finance. Even before we go to the fancier things and debt for debt swaps and all of that, there's plenty to do in whether it's the multilateral support or our own resourcing as we go forward. The focus has to be more and more and more indigenous. और आज सुबह भी मैं एक कॉन्फ्रेंस पे था जहां हम कैपिटल मार्केट्स की बात कर रहे हैं, ओवर रिलायंस ऑन बैंक्स. कैपिटल मार्केट्स में बहुत गुंजाइश मौजूद है where we can actually come and gather these resources and move them towards green investment and green finance. So I think there मैंने चेयरमैन SCCP को भी आज सुबह कहा है और आज जो सारी बात हुई है कि we are going to put more and more focus on capital markets, on debt capital markets as we move forward in terms of green finance. And the last thing is anything that we can do and we are doing in terms of accelerating our journey towards renewables. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you again and God bless.